Well, the protests and counter-protests in Kenosha and Portland in recent days have underscored the deep divide in our country right now over issues of race, policing, and the use of firearms by both law enforcement and by everyday citizens, with protests in both cities escalating into violent and deadly confrontations. And now Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, is out with a new book called The Violence Inside Us, a brief history of an ongoing American tragedy, examining the origins of violence in America and what he calls our nation's obsession with firearms. Senator Chris Murphy joins me now. Senator, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, your book talks about violence in America, particularly gun violence and its deep roots. How did we get to this point?
Violence has always been a part of the American story. And what I say in the book is that we were likely destined to be a more violent nation. But we have chosen to throw kerosene on this smoldering fire by also allowing this nation to be awash in guns, especially very dangerous, powerful guns, especially guns in the hands of the wrong people. And so, well, we have to really take a big step back and understand that our racist roots as a nation have a lot to do with today's levels of violence. The quickest return we can get is to make sure that there are fewer weapons out there, fewer weapons that are being brought to the protests that we are watching, fewer weapons in the streets of America, fewer weapons that are available to people who are having suicidal thoughts. If you take that step, you will see a pretty dramatic reduction in violence. But the book also makes the case that it is more complicated than just guns. You've got to understand why we started as a violent nation and attack those roots as well.
And I want to get into what's happening to cities across the country, but just to back up a little bit, because you say that your book is to make the other side less scared. There's a lot of people that are scared right now on both sides. So what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I do think this has been one of these issues where we have trouble coming together. I describe an incident in the book where a man is waiting for me after a speech I gave outdoors a festival in Connecticut, and he's very angry with me, and he says, I want to talk to you because you're that guy who's going to try to take away my guns. And I very quickly try to get him into a discussion about what I'm actually for, which is universal background check. And once I do that, he says, well, I'm for those. I mean, I went through a background check. I think people should have to prove that they're not a criminal. And as we understand each other better, as we don't allow the NRA and the gun lobby to define this debate, we can find common ground. I say in this book that I actually think there is a constitutional right to the private ownership of guns, something that might surprise people. But I think there's an ability for us to have a common sense discussion about guns in this nation that, you know, unites at least 80% of us. And that is part of the answer for what plagues this nation today.
But you know that it's not stricter gun laws and background checks that are the only answer here. I mean, every day guns are being smuggled into this country and being used to kill people, guns without any trace. And so that is something that has to be tackled in the moment.
Well, that's right. And the opening story of this book is the story of a young man named Shane Oliver, a 20-year-old, who's killed in a verbal dispute over a girl in Hartford, Connecticut, just 2 months before Sandy Hook. And it was an illegal weapon that was pulled out of the car of his assailant in the middle of this argument that ended this very promising young man's life. But every illegal weapon starts as a legal weapon. The way that that gun got to Hartford is that somewhere along the line, some criminal bought it at a gun show or online and was not prohibited from doing so because there wasn't a background check attached to it. And then he sells it to somebody on the streets of Hartford, and it all of a sudden becomes an illegal weapon.
But what about the guns that are being purchased on the black market? I mean, those individuals definitely aren't getting a background check.
Well, but that's right. But the black market starts often by the gun being sold outside of the background check system, because the black market is run by criminals. And so how do guns get to Connecticut and be sold illegally? Well, they get bought in gun shows in places like South Carolina and Florida. Those criminals buy them there where there are no questions asked, and they bring them up to Connecticut and sell them illegally. So by making it so that every gun has to go through a background check, you make some real progress here. But I also make the broader point that Shane's life in Hartford had enormously limited possibilities. He probably didn't think he was going to live past 20, and that's in part because of the economic reality of so many young people who live in these inner cities. And there's a correlation between the number of illegal guns in your community and gun homicides, but also between income and poverty and your chances of being killed in gun violence. And so we need to address both of these issues.
So you were first elected to the Senate in 2012, and that was just 1 month before the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary and in your home state. And you've been a vocal proponent of gun control measures, most of which have not been successful, even as these deadly mass shootings have escalated in recent years. Why is that?
Well, the worst moment of my legislative career was in the spring of 2013 when the background checks bill failed. I was with many of the families from Sandy Hook that day, and I tell the story in the book of what it was like to walk out of the Senate chamber and tell these parents that we had lost, despite the fact that many people thought the world had changed after Sandy Hook. What we realized that day was that we hadn't lost the argument. It's that we just didn't have a powerful enough political movement. Unfortunately, this is all about politics in the end, and you have to be stronger than the other side. Well, that's what we've been doing for the last 7 years. We've built up an anti-gun violence movement that is now stronger than the gun lobby is. We have groups like Moms Demand Action and Gifford in every town that are winning more elections than the NRA is. The NRA, frankly, is falling apart. So what I've learned is that you have to build political power. We're doing that. That's why we had so much success in 2018. And that's why I think that we'll have a lot of success on this issue in 2020.
So final question, President Trump and other Republicans really leaned on the law and order theme at the RNC and saying that they'll keep the country safer than a Democratic White House. Joe Biden has responded back that the violence we're seeing in this country is happening on President Trump's watch. Do you agree?
Well, this is Donald Trump's America. I mean, Donald Trump would like to perform this Jedi mind trick in which he makes us all forget that he's president, and he'd like us to believe that Joe Biden is in the White House. But we are in the situation we are in today with a pandemic that is raging out of control because of this president. We could have taken care of this back in the spring if we had a competent administration. And the president, in going to Wisconsin today, is seeking to fan the flames of unrest. He's decided that he's better off the more chaotic our streets are. And so he is going to, unfortunately, do no healing. He is only going to exacerbate the situation. Joe Biden stood up yesterday and condemned violence, no matter who commits that offense. He reminded us all that violence in this country was going down during the Obama years. We've seen murders in our cities increase by 26% this year under Trump. There's a real contrast here, and I don't think any voter is going to be fooled to think that the America we're watching now is anything other than Donald Trump's America.
Senator Chris Murphy, the book is The Violence Inside Us, and it is out now. We appreciate your time so much, Senator. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.